So today I'm going to be talking about increasing collaboration, the benefits of doing so, the challenges to doing so, and ways that we might overcome those challenges. And I do think that interaction is important, so if you have questions or would like to share your perspective, please don't hesitate to do that, okay? I really like that exchange. Right? So I can't imagine any industry that could benefit more from cooperation and collaboration than the animal welfare industry. But all too often this just seems to not be the case, right? Of course, there will be different opinions about missions and sheltering and population management practices. But instead of focusing on our differences, what if we could find common ground stemming from common interests, right? I believe, pardon me for a second here, I believe that by uniting our strengths through a collaborative effort, we can improve our operations, we can improve our outcomes, and we can have a much greater impact on animal welfare than we might otherwise. So why collaborate? Well, it can increase the reach and the scope of your efforts. It can increase visibility and PR and marketing opportunities. It can increase access to new resources or help you to stretch existing resources. It can help you to reach non-target audiences and expand your support base. It can decrease the cost of services and programs and events and continuing education. It can help to establish and promote your image as a good community partner, right? And this point is incredibly important because you think about this, your public image is probably one of your most important assets, right? And being viewed as a good community partner can help to support that image. You could be helping other shelters in need, like through animal transfers, and ultimately you could be saving lives, right? Isn't that what we're all here for? So why would we, or when would we not want to collaborate? I love that picture. It's great. So, you know, it might not be appropriate or worthwhile to collaborate if the right kind of leadership is lacking. No tie in there, by the way. Collaboration requires leadership that inspires us to break out of our silos and to accept shared responsibility, right, for a common goal. Participants are unwilling or unable to embrace change. Successful collaboration sometimes requires us to change the way that we think and we interact and we operate. Participants don't aspire to be high performers. And let me tell you from personal experience, a weak link can decrease your effectiveness. It can impact your effort. It can also impact your reputation. And you don't want that happening, right? And then a lack of a shared vision or a strong common goal. Because without these, you could experience mission creep and also personal agendas can get in the way. So, barriers to collaboration. I have talked with a number of people in animal welfare, and they contend that the lack of cooperation and collaboration stems primarily from a competition to attract donor support or to be considered the best shelter, right? But I think that there's more to it than that. In my experience, the lack of collaboration and cooperation also stems from different approaches to accomplishing what are perceived to be different missions, and the unwillingness of people to realize that there can be more than one way to accomplish what should be common goals, right? But let's run through some of the barriers that I've encountered. Different missions. Really? Aren't we all in this to save and improve lives? And even if we have different missions, should that preclude us from working together? I don't think so, right? A lack of trust. I can't think of a bigger barrier than that. A lack of buy-in at all levels of the organization, right? Because dissent at any level could compromise your effort. Different sheltering and population management practices. Ego, right? We're the best. We know better. We do better. We're just better, right? It's one of my favorites. Unwillingness to relinquish control, right? Collaboration requires that we are able to share responsibility for an outcome. Partnering is not a cultural norm. And by that, I mean having an inclusive rather than an exclusive mindset. a lack of understanding what collaborative opportunities actually exist. A good example here are non-traditional partnerships. And my absolute favorite, a lack of civil discourse between organizations. I call it hating, right? Anybody familiar with hating out there in animal welfare? Yeah, we'll get to that. So we're going to take a brief detour here, and I'd like to touch on the importance of civil discourse and its impact on collaboration, right? So what is civil discourse? Well, a simple definition is engaging in conversation to enhance understanding of another's position or perspective, right? Pretty simple in theory, right? So how many of you believe that there's a problem with or have experienced a lack of civil discourse in animal welfare circles? Let's see some hands. I want you to keep your hands up. Look around you right now. Look around you. It's a lot of hands, isn't it? It's a lot of hands. I have to admit that this is just a huge pet peeve of mine. So in my experience, the biggest factors contributing to lack of civil discourse are different population management practices and what I call one-size-fits-all sheltering, right? That's the unwillingness of people to accept approaches that don't align with theirs, right? And without civil discourse, the reason this is important, without civil discourse, we keep operating in isolation, we limit our opportunities for collaboration, we create ill will, and we compromise the integrity of our industry, right? And this is an incredibly important point, and I want you to think about this. Do you think that the right kind of people are attracted to organizations that are out there acting unprofessionally and slamming each other? I don't think so. And I think when we engage in these kind of bad behaviors, it makes us all look bad, and it drives people away from us, right? And that brings me to my next point. Obviously, this is a concern if the HSUS felt it was necessary for them to develop a civility pledge for our industry, right? So how many of you here are familiar with this pledge? See hands? Nobody's familiar with this pledge, right? My next question was going to be how many of you have signed up? I did. I signed up. I would encourage you to find the HSUS Civility Pledge and give it a read-through. It's fairly long, and unfortunately, we don't have the time to go through the entire pledge today, but I would like to take just a moment to present the last paragraph of this pledge to you. We must always bear in mind that name-calling, unfounded accusations, and frivolous disparagement of a shelter or a rescue only drives the public away and discourages them from adopting. And with 80% of Americans still getting their pets from sources other than shelters and rescues, that's a losing proposition for shelter animals if ever there was one. I think that is did you get a moment to absorb that? Yeah. I think that's an incredibly powerful statement. And I mean, what more do we need to reinforce the fact that we at least need to be civil with each other, right? Because if we're not helping the animals that we claim to care about so much, right? And I'd like to share one more thought with you about civility and working together before we move on, right? We don't move things forward when we disconnect from each other because of our differences. We move things forward when we reconcile those differences, unite our strengths, and work together for the common good, right? Think about that for a minute. That has become a very, very useful mantra for me. So what can we do to promote collaboration? Well, I believe one of the most powerful approaches is through the practice of emotional correctness, right? So what do I mean by this, right? Well, I see it as forming a connection stemming from a common interest. That's emotional correctness. In theory, it's simple, right? Forming a connection stemming from a common interest. And once we get there, we can start to have truly productive conversations. Using emotional correctness helps to build trust, right? And the presence of trust matters because it establishes a bond, it reduces uncertainty, and it impacts the potential for future collaborations. And no matter what differences exist, I feel the golden rule of overcoming barriers is seek to understand other perspectives, right? And one of the best ways to get there is through the practice of emotional correctness. Establishing a culture of collaboration, making it a routine part of how you accomplish certain goals, right? And then using emotional correctness and dialogue, I've found in my experience that if you can focus on discussing shared and individual goals, limitations, barriers, and challenges, differences and similarities, and your respective needs, you are much, much more likely to have successful collaboration. And that brings me to my next point. I'd like to give you an example. Let's put theory into action. A few years back, the founder of a local rescue group came to our shelter and went absolutely berserk. I know, I love that. Went absolutely berserk about our euthanasia policy, right? Berserk to the point that the state police had to get involved. Yep. And she would get out there on social media and just talk all kinds of nonsense about our organization. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. But I'll tell you what, we did not hate back. We did not engage in any negativity. And we did not get in the dirt with her. She was a very difficult person to deal with. But I'll tell you what, we did not hate back, we did not engage in negativity, and we did not get in the dirt with this person, right? What we did do is we started a dialogue with other members of that organization, right, about our differences and our similarities and our respective needs and how we might work together to make improvements, right? We identified our common interests and we focused on discussing them, right, and addressing them. And nowadays, they take dogs from us that we might not have foster homes for or that might not be appropriate for our adoption program. We provide them access to our low-cost spay-neuter clinics so they can get affordable services. Right? So what happened? Both the animals and the organizations benefited from us having a civil dialogue and being emotionally correct. Right? And for the most part, we now get along. Right? Novel concept, huh? Right? It works. So opportunities. Although I believe that opportunities for collaboration are really only limited by your imagination, I would like to take a look at some easy to implement, simple collaborations, a good way to get started. So exchange animals with prolonged lengths of stay, right? Sometimes a change of venue can really improve adoption potential. Hold joint continuing education classes. Hold multi-shelter spay-neuter clinics, right? That could result in cost savings for everybody. Exchange or share unneeded or excess supplies. Transfer in animals to ease overcrowding at other shelters. Hold joint fundraising or promotional events. Hold affordable or free vaccine clinics for low-income pet owners. Collaborate on out-of-state transports. And collaborate with non-traditional partners, which we'll get to that in just a moment. But I'd like to ask you, what are some simple, easy to implement collaborations that you may have engaged in? Anybody want to share?
Try to help them out and cut costs on their.
Right. So you're sharing unneeded or excess supplies, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, absolutely. Pretty easy to do too, right? Easy to do. And then what does that lead to? More collaboration, right? Right. So what I'm hearing from him is that it also created a domino effect where one collaborative opportunity led to another and another and another. And I found in my own experience too that if you start simple and you start small and you build on that success and you build trust and confidence, you start to expand those collaborations. It's really amazing how that happens. So I'm going to move on to non-traditional partnerships. So I think that this topic could really, it's a non-traditional partnership. Yeah. I think this topic could really warrant a separate discussion, but I just wanted to share some examples of some great non-traditional partnerships that I've been involved with. Libraries. We host monthly animal-themed reading programs for kids with reading difficulties. Nature centers. We host a jointly fundraising hiking event. Food banks. We partner with our regional distribution center, and they supply about 60 to 70% of the need for our on-site pet food pantry, and they do that free of charge. Right? What an incredible partnership. Historical societies. We host periodic happy hours, or we call them yappy hours, and we give animal-themed presentations and food and drink pairings, and these routinely sell out, and they're just incredibly, they're really popular and a whole lot of fun. Senior citizen service organizations. We supply pet food to help offset the cost of pet care for their clients. And this also helps to reduce potential surrenders, right? They're able to keep those animals in those homes. Insurance brokers. Imagine animal shelter and insurance broker. You look stunned, right? Well, we partner with the largest insurance broker in our area, and what they do is they provide homeowners insurance with no breed restrictions, right? What's one of the reasons that pets get surrendered? People are moving, whatever. They can't get insurance for that breed of dog, right? Well, they solve that problem, right? They help to solve that problem. So we promote them, and they in turn promote our programs and our services and whatnot. So it's a great partnership. Housing providers. We also partner with the area's largest pet-friendly housing provider to promote their services, and they in turn sponsor our major events and promote our services. So there's just a whole lot. That's what collaboration is, right? Whole lot of give and take going on. So why are these non-traditional partnerships important? Well, they help you to reach non-target audiences, right? Folks you would never traditionally think of reaching out to, which expands your support base. It promotes your image as a good community partner. We touched on that earlier. And it helps to generate some outstanding PR opportunities, right? And I think we all know how important those are too, right? So I think that it's perfectly reasonable to ask if partnering and collaborating can have a measurable, meaningful impact on your operations, right? Well, I'll tell you, over the last few years, the only significant change my organization made was to focus on these, right? To make that really a target of what we wanted to improve upon. And since then, our live release rate has increased by 16%. Our rate of first-time donors increased by 11%. Our annual donor revenue, average annual donor revenue, has increased by about 7%, and our rate of new volunteers has increased by 6%, right? And what's even more impressive is some of our partners have experienced similar trends, right? So, while I understand that correlation does not mean causation, I cannot help but believe that there's a connection here. So what are the key takeaways to what we've been talking about here? I don't know that. That's not one of the key takeaways. So there are many obvious and some not so obvious benefits to collaborating. Remember signs when collaboration may not be appropriate. Recognize barriers to collaboration and take steps to overcome them. Civil discourse and emotional correctness are powerful tools for promoting collaboration. Try to focus on common interests and study your differences. Embrace the benefit of being a good community partner. And don't underestimate the value of non-traditional partnerships. So that's my brief spin on collaboration. Well, thank you so much. And you know what? If nothing else, remember, be nice to each other, okay? Be nice to each other. Thank you.